host for today's half hour with The Late Late Show with James Corden. Joining us today are host and producer James Corden, executive producer Ben Winston, and executive producer Rob Crabbe. Before we take a look at some clips from this last season, I would love to ask if Ben or Rob could give us a quick overview of the latest season, sort of in your own words.
I think it's the season that we've been able to go back to the show that we always wanted to make. We always wanted our show to be a fun-filled variety show with huge stunts, big sketches, and ambition throughout it all. And COVID, in a way, killed that for us, because from going on a crosswalk to sitting in a car to flying in a plane, we weren't allowed to do any of it. So what's been lovely about these last few months with the COVID restrictions lifted is we've been able to really breathe life back into the show we always wanted to make, which is a variety show where you don't really know what's going to happen each night.
Rob, anything you want to add to that?
No, I would agree to that. This was, we had to pivot, obviously, like everybody else did during COVID. And we've still been in a bit of that. We're still under certain protocols, but just being able to get our legs back under us and sort of do the show that we always intended, it's been really great. It's particularly in the last 6 weeks or so.
Yeah. Well, why don't we take a look at some clips from the latest season?
The one, the only, James Corden!
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the Late Late Show. What was that?
You said you wanted 1,000 balloons to drop on you.
Inflated balloons. Hey, Rabbit, meet the goat. Nick's our boss. We treat him with nothing but respect. Can't wait to hear the song that you write about this.
I'm in love with the shape of poo.
This is our 1,000th episode. Help me, somebody.
Hi, James.
You know how I love my tequila?
Tell me.
On the rock.
Take that off me right now. It's a bad joke.
I'm sorry.
You are bringing it.
The name's Bond. James Bond.
First one's back! Somebody better call the fire department, because we're gonna blow this place up with some dynamite! No. I apologize. I'll choose my words more carefully next time.
That's amazing. 1,000 episodes you hit this season. That's incredible. And it's funny because, James, going back a few years, I remember speaking to you before the show premiered, and you were joking, I think you were joking, that you had no business hosting a talk show. From the beginning, what did you sort of hope to achieve with this show, and how has it met or even exceeded your expectations?
Well, it certainly exceeded them, for sure. No question of that. I guess in many ways it felt like it was a challenge to see if, I might be capable of doing such a thing. Like you said, it was never something that I ever thought would come my way. I mean, who would ever think something like this would come their way? If I'm being deadly honest, I never thought it would necessarily work. I was quite adamant that the show probably wouldn't find an audience because the odds were so stacked against us. I'd never been on a talk show. I'd never been on an American talk show before I got this job. So we just had no goodwill. We had no track history. We really knew nothing. And that's, that's why but what I did know that I did have was my best friend and Ben, who I thought, well, if we go and try and do this together, I felt like I had a secret weapon that no one knew about. And then we both looked at each other and thought we really probably should try and find somebody who knows at least what happens on a late night talk show, and found Rob, which was just a blessing. That we always hoped that we'd be able to find Rob. We didn't know if he existed, and sure enough, there he was, living in Brooklyn, New York, and we came on this journey. And look, it's so far exceeded any of my dreams. The show is exactly what I wanted it to be. That's the best thing I can say about it. I can remember saying to Ben, forget the time slot, forget anything. We're going to make a show that launches at 12:37 at night, but we will absolutely just embrace the internet, and we're going to make a show that will just be consumed all over the world, in people in bathroom breaks and train stations and at home or last thing at night and first thing in the morning. We will be a show where people will find us if we make it good. And if we make it good and we make it big enough, we can have an ambition to the show that far outstrips its traditional time slot, you know. So I feel incredibly proud of it. And even as I was saying all these things, I didn't know if it was possible. I was just trying to convince him to get his wife to move to America with us, you know. So I thought it would take us longer than it did. I didn't think we'd launch something like Carpool Karaoke on our second show, that we'd shoot it before we aired. I didn't think that we'd end up talking to you now, having last week, you know, flown around in a aeroplane with Tom Cruise for Top Gun, you know what I mean, and making a whole special for that. Like, it's crazy to me. It's all been the most ridiculously fulfilling ride.
I actually wanted to talk about the Top Gun training school special that you made for Paramount Plus and the flight with Tom Cruise. I was going to get to it later, but since you brought it up, how does something like that even come together? Do you pitch things in a room thinking, you know, this can never happen, and then somehow they do?
Well, I think it sort of charts back to the first time Tom was on the show. We did this thing, which we actually did on our first ever show we did with Tom Hanks, where we recreate someone's entire film career in 6 or 7 minutes. And we had, you know, Tom Cruise is obviously one of the greatest people on planet Earth that you could do this with. And we had a really great time, and I knew that he enjoyed it, and we got on really well. And then we did a couple of other bits. We shot a thing in London with him, and I'd seen on TV this thing where he'd done this halo jump for Mission Impossible, which was like a 4-minute jump that he'd done for real. And I sent him a text and said, we should jump out of a plane together for Top Gun, which I really enjoyed. Jumping out of a plane, I think, is a thrilling and exhilarating thing, and I would recommend it to anyone. So we did that, and that did really, really, like, I think that's like, I don't know, just on YouTube.
Mission
alone.
Impossible.
Yes, so Mission Impossible. I think for Mission Impossible, that's had alone like 60 million views online or something. And I think it was when we were doing that, he, I think, brought up the idea of, like, he knew he was going on to Top Gun, and he said, you know what we should do? Me and you should get in a plane together and fly around. And of course you go, yeah, absolutely. Never thinking that will be something that comes along. And then before you know it, you're pacing around your house at 3 a.m. writing an email to your friends and producers going, guys, I don't think I can do this. And then you wake up the next day to a phone call from Tom Cruise, who in only the way that he can, just tells you that you're completely safe, despite the fact, you know, there's no way he can know that. And that was it. Yeah.
Ben and Rob, from a producing standpoint, what is it like when your host comes to you with this idea that you know is great and will be great to watch, but logistically, it's got to be crazy for the two of you?
I think that part's easier than the 3 a.m. email where he says that Tom Cruise is going to kill me. That's the one where you sort of panic and you wonder what you've done and how you've gotten this far along. But we have an unbelievable team. And I think that we have, I don't know, I'm a little biased, but I think we have the best team of producers, writers, crew in late night. And so, you know, it's in good hands when you turn it over to the field team and they get started. And everyone's here's just always motivated to go big and make the best possible thing. I think that no one's ever lost sight of what we're trying to do, which is make a giant, broad variety show. And so we hired people that wanted to make that show with us. And so everybody comes in every day ready to do that. So logistically, I mean, it's a huge amount of trouble, but I think it's ultimately worth it.
I mean, are you ever worried for his safety, though? If you lose your host, you're in trouble.
I think on that one, that one we specifically were in advance leading up to that. I think James was keen on doing it. And then in the days before it, he sort of at one point pulled out of it. I think it's fair to say, Jay. I think I actually remember where I was. We were in New York together. We were walking the street, and he was just like, I just think it's silly. Like, I just don't think there's an upside to it. And Tom did persuade you back in, but that one I was very nervous because I knew he had been nervous, and I also, you know, it was very important that Rob and I didn't persuade him to do it. You know, I remember thinking at the time and chatting to Rob saying, look, this has got to be his decision, because he's got to, you know, we can't try and persuade him to do something, because then, you know, he's not going to be comfortable. He's got to come to it himself. But yeah, it's very rare that we do something as crazy as that. I mean, you know, ambition wise with the show, I think it's endless for our program. And I think our job, James has an incredible, brilliant, both writing and producing mind. And I think when he says, you know, I won't say what it is, but this weekend he texted me about an idea to do with a big superstar, and he just texted that idea and never thought about it. And then today we presented him with like structures and plans, and we'd had meetings with, you know, Los Angeles Council.
And in that meeting, Ben did say, with all due respect, this is your idea.
And James was like, well, why are we doing this? And I was like, yeah, because we take it seriously. When he texts us an idea, we're like, okay, let's look if we can do that. And
I
so
thought it would be impossible. I never thought it would get as far as people presenting plans and what it would actually look
like. Why are we doing this? And I said, we're doing this because you texted me at the weekend that it would be fun. So here's a plan. So I think, look, we want to be the most ambitious show there is. James and I never moved from London. Rob never moved from New York to make a talk show. It wasn't what we wanted to do. We wanted to make a variety series. And whether that be cars or crosswalks or planes or sketch in the Oval Office with Biden that's coming soon or whatever it may be, we always wanted to do something bold and ambitious. And that's what we've done. And like, you know, Rob mentions, you know, we are very lucky. We've got amazing directors and writers who allow us to do that. I often think it's funny when we do these awards things, and you know, I think when it comes to like directing, and you look at the talk shows that, you know, and I mean no disrespect, but I'm just going to be honest, you look at the talk shows that essentially the directing is very good, but it's guests and it's a desk and it's wonderfully directed, but they're always nominated. And then our directors are filming planes and stunts in a crosswalk and mad sketches and you know, I think deserve huge respect. Glenn Clements, Tim Mancinelli. So we like being a big ambitious show, and we like having unpredictability within our program, and I hope that we deliver on that.
You didn't set out to be a talk show, but James, I have seen you perform on stage, so I was not surprised by your abilities as a performer, but you are actually a really great interviewer. How did you sort of hone those skills? And, you know, I don't even know if I'd say you improved over the years, because you've been pretty good right out of the gate.
Thanks. I suppose in many respects, I don't view it as an interview, really. I view it as I like it to be an informal, organic conversation. Oddly, the thing I feel most proud of in that carpool karaoke segment is not necessarily the songs, because often you're singing huge hits with great, huge stars. So yes, like, how would you ever tire? The thing I most enjoy in that is I do believe it is because what makes a good interview? A good interview is where you perhaps see a side of someone that you hadn't really seen before. And I think what I really love in those carpool segments is I do think there is a natural discussion that happens in those, which is very free. And, you know, it's a very different thing when you're talking to one person in a car than it is on a couch with another guest and a whole audience. So I've always just enjoyed talking to people. I guess in many ways, I don't really see it as I'm going to do a hard-hitting interview and get them to break. You know, I just sort of think I really want the show to be, I want people to be the most natural version and the most comfortable version of themselves. And fundamentally, all our show ever wants to do is we want the guests to shine. So if the guests shine, the show shines. The show shines, I shine, we all shine, and we all carry on doing it. So that's really where it comes from. And I think guests feel comfortable here. And I know that they do.
You do want your guests to shine, and that often means that you sort of cast yourself as kind of this like petulant, arrogant, you know, you want to be the star in these musical crosswalk moments.
All right, that's a complete performance and nothing like me.
Well, that's the question. Like, developing that persona, is that fun to play?
It's great fun. I mean, there's nothing more fun to play. You know, so many of those things are part scripted, part improvised, part, you know, particularly in like those things like Crosswalk the musical and stuff, where I think there's always something very, very funny about somebody who thinks that they're doing something that is very important. I think there's almost nothing funnier, you know, particularly if it's within the world of performing arts. You know, the way that some people talk about mounting a show is like they're talking about they're just saving lives, and I do believe they're enhancing people's lives. But the idea of somebody talking about something so serious, but actually what they're doing is running out onto a crosswalk to perform just while the lights are red, and then running off, and never ever seeing it for what it is, only seeing it as, even in criticism, feeling it as praise, is, I always think, a very fun thing to do.
It has big theater camp energy. That's what I love about it. There was always
Yeah.
that one person at theater camp who, had to run everything. And it's
I know
actually
lots of them. Yeah.
it's always been my dream. I drive down that street all the time. I can't believe I've never seen a crosswalk in person.
Next time, if we ever do it again, we'll let you know, I promise.
Give me a heads up. I'll make a visit. You are all so well known for your viral segments like the crosswalk, like carpool karaoke and drop the mic. What segment from this past season are you proudest of?
Oh man, we've got a few. I mean, we've already talked about Top Gun, so I don't want to keep going on about that training school. But I do believe that from a production standpoint, the way that it's shot is there's shots in that are so beautiful. It could be like The English Patient, in those you see that prop plane going across those mountains, and when you think this is a late night talk show, 12:37 on CBS, it's sort of extraordinary that something like that would be shot. And obviously we're very aided by the fact that we got to make this the special for Paramount. So, but I mean, I think that the bit we did with Harry Styles is really funny, just in terms of access, really, to take, the person that is arguably the hottest male singer, pop star on the planet, really, at the moment, and on the week that his album was breaking every record, to be knocking on someone's door in Brooklyn and making a music video for a song, to make a music video for $300 in 3 hours with the biggest star on earth at that particular moment in time is great. And I think it's really funny, and the quality of it's great. I mean, the Formula One piece we went to Miami and shot, I really love. The Nicki Minaj carpool, I really like. I think our monologues are, that's actually the one place that our show improved during COVID. Was our opening 20 minutes of the show is oddly in many ways the opening 20 minutes I always thought that we'd have, but I just couldn't really find it. Our show sort of jumped quicker than it became a sort of big variety show, and this gave us a chance to sort of settle into some other things. So I don't know, there's so many bits, the stuff at the White House. There's been a lot of travel. It's been a lot of getting around and getting out of the studio. It just felt such a shame. It felt so silly to us to come out of COVID and still make a show that was confined in the studio. It just didn't make any sense to us, really. It thought, if everyone's been trapped in, let's get out. Let's get out and absolutely get out and try and shoot as many big things as we can,
Ben, what about for you?
I really love the ideas and the delivery of both the Harry music video, which I think is really it's an exceptional idea. It's so simple, and it could be its own spin-off TV series. And watch this space, where you literally try and make a music video with an artist with no idea. Literally, Harry and him turn up to a street, they go knocking on a door, they make these girls' dreams come true, and then actually we showed up how easy it is to make a music video, because literally it was sort of 3 hours and $300, and a music video that I think is really fun. And I guess I am really proud of that bit, because I just think it's really funny, and I think it's a really bold, original idea. I haven't seen that anywhere before, and I just think it's there's something really like James says, you're taking a huge big star and you're doing something that really could go so wrong. That was a swing we took, right? And of course we have a relationship with Harry, so it made it slightly less nerve-wracking, because he was there to come with us. But I just think it was one of those where we're at our best, where James happened, Harry obviously always wants to support the Late Late Show. I think it's no secret that, we're his favorite place on late night to come and be and perform and have fun with. He's hosted the show. When James had his third child, Harry came and was our host. So I think, he wanted to do something for the show, but just couldn't get to LA. It just so happened that James was in New York that week to do the CBS upfronts. And with a week to go, we're like, okay, well, Harry and James are both in New York for an afternoon and up for something. What can we do? And it's a brilliant writing team. I think it was Ian Carmel or Lauren Greenberg, our head writer's idea. They came up with that. It's a great top line, make a music video in New York City. And then the production and the whole ambition of it and the delivery of it and the great jokes in there. There's great jokes there, whether it's Harry in the bath or James in a green suit or, the pizza guy coming. There's both. It's exactly the right balance between documentary and reality and also sketch with an ending of a music video that's brilliant. So for me, partly as just a massive Harry fan myself, just that whole thing and seeing that come to fruition was very, very exciting.
Rob, for you?
James mentioned a bunch. I mean, obviously, I love the Top Gun piece. I love the Harry piece. James mentioned Access, and I think that a piece that we'll show you in a few weeks at the White House, I don't know if these guys appreciate it as much as I do. I'm just absolutely gobsmacked by the level of access we were given to the White House, and the rooms we got into and the stuff that we were able to do there. And then I think that's all outside, but I think one of the pure examples of what we do very well was the day after the Oscars this year, when the big story was obviously Will Smith. And so everyone was going to be addressing that, and we needed to figure out how we would address it. And you come into work on Monday morning and you sort of have that blank page, which is one of the joys of late night. And we did this. Our version of it was a take on We Don't Talk About Bruno, We Don't Talk About Jada. There was a musical number shot in the studio that I think we finished 12 minutes before the show aired. And that's one where it's just an all hands on deck, where all the producers come together, the writers, the production designer, casting, and under our COVID protocols, where you got to get people into the building that can shoot the thing and be the dancers and get the umbrellas and all the stuff. And that I think is a really pure example of what our show does very, very well. And the type of scale that we can apply to something. So that's another one that I thought we did quite a good turn on.
After 1,000 episodes, is it hard to ever maintain the freshness and the creativity of a series like this, or do you find that you're energized anew every time?
Well, look, I think it can be hard. I don't think anyone would say that any different. We've been doing this now for 7 years, and remember, it's an hour of television a day, so that's a lot of hours of TV. But then I think coming out of COVID, that's what's felt really re-energizing, really, is
I agree.
Because we're just not a show that really just sort of monologue, despot, chat, music out. That's just not the show that we ever wanted to make. And so if that is your show, COVID was a challenge for everybody and painful and difficult. But if you think about our show, you never really think about any, we do despots, of course we do, but you don't really think about them as being defining of our show. You don't think of our hard-hitting political satire. You think of big musical numbers, you think of crosswalks and carpools and big sketches and all those things, and those are the things that we couldn't do. So, but coming out of COVID, it's felt not just with us, with the whole team. It's we're doing something, we're going to go to London. We've been out in cars with people. It feels great.
Something we always love to ask our guests at the end is, in case, someone hasn't learned how to live on 6 hours of sleep and hasn't turned into the Late Late Show, what's the one thing that comes to mind that might entice them to start watching this fantastic show in real time?
The fact that it's going to end in a year.
I didn't want to bring that up. I'm so sad.
If they're not going to watch it, this isn't a show that they can just start to pick up in 2 years' time. It'll be gone. So I would say if you've not got into it now, you've not got long to see what any of the fuss might have been about. But I mean, as a serious answer, I would say, but we always want to make a show that's joyful. We always want to make a show that's kind. We want to make a show that's warm and loving and uplifting. And so many conversations that I have right now in my life with lots of people are about how lacking that might be in society at the moment, about how absolutely, how at boiling point it's felt for so long, and the opposition and sides and anger and you know, people are quick to be very, very mean and cruel. And if you're sick of that, if that feels like something that you becomes tiresome at the end of your day, and how can it not? We have only ever wanted to make a show that is joyful and celebrating of all of our similarities rather than our differences. That's what we want to do. We want to make something that is uplifting and joyful and beautiful, and we hope funny, you know.
Ben, for you?
No, I think that's it. I think it's a joy thing. I think that I think the one thing I'd say is if people watch us on YouTube and they just watch our bits, which I think is a lot of people, let's be honest. I think the Tom Cruise thing's up to like 30 million hits online right now. There's 30 million people who are watching our monologue. But I think our monologues are really disarming because they're not monologues. James is essentially, we got rid of James standing in front of the curtain. He introduces the guests, and then we roll to the titles, and then he sits, and essentially what happened over COVID was our crew, whether it be mocking our senior vice president of late night, Nick Bernstein, or whether it be Dave Piendak, one of our producers, or including Ian Carmel, our head writer, it became much more of like a chat, a fun thing. And our crew became part of the stars of the show. And we've continued that into our post-COVID era. And I actually think that that's been the one great thing that's come out of COVID. Very little is great that came out of that. But I think for the show, that element of loosey-goosiness, as we call it, where James sits at a desk and yes, he has stuff that he can read in the prompter, but actually it's the stuff where he goes off-piste and starts talking about what Ian's wearing that day, or where Mark on the jib camera is going on holiday on his boat, or wherever it may be, or whatever we talk about, or how we don't really understand what Nick Bernstein does for a job. Like all of those elements, I think, are the things that have made this really fun. So now we have a show where we have really changed in the last 7 years. And the show that you'll watch tonight will have a real loose discussion about the news with a group of people who have become our audience's friends. Big ambitious bits that we've spoken about, from, the president to Harry Styles to Tom Cruise. Great chat where we're the only show where all the guests come out at the same time. So it feels like you're more at a dinner party than a talk show with anecdotes you've heard 5 times. And then music shot in a really interesting way by our great team of cameramen and directors. And I think that offering of an hour is a really fun thing to watch every night, and something that we're really proud to put on TV, even if it is at a time where nobody in their right mind should be awake.
I'm up every night. I will have you know, I'm a night owl.
Better than
Wow, that's amazing. You beat all 3 of us. I don't know how I would possibly add on to any of that. I just, I think that the way James hosts those first acts of the show, Vulture does this ranking of the best moments in late night that I have to say I'll look at. And at one point they had our Act 1 as the number 1 thing of the week. Which they frequently will have us in there. It said they wrote, if we're being honest, all 5 of these would just be the opening acts of each late show. And I found that very flattering for the show and for the way in which James hosts the show, because it has sort of made, it sort of epitomizes what the 3 of us always wanted to do when we started the show 7.5 years ago, in January of 2015. We didn't know what the show would be, but we only had an emotional language to speak about it. And all we were aiming for is joy, as James alluded to. And hopefully we're striking a little bit of that. And I think that, I think people got a little angrier during lockdown, but you won't find a happier place than the comments section on our YouTube page. And that was never a place you go to look for compliments. So I think that we are sort of fulfilling what we wanted the show to be. And this far into it, 7.5 years into it, that feels quite good.
I would normally advise never read the comments, but this might be the one exception where it's okay to read the comments. Well, again, I want to say thank you to our friends at CBS Studios, and thank you to James, Ben, and Rob for joining us today. And for everyone watching at home, thank you so much for joining us for this half hour with.
Thanks, Jenelle.
Thank you very much, Jenelle. Appreciate you taking the time.